Good morning, Earthlings. How you doing today? Welcome to First Contact Radio. All right, let's jump over to our cosmic weather. Spaceweather.com has our solar wind 447.5 kilometers per second. Planetary K index is low. It's at a 1. In the next 24 hours could get no higher than a 2, it shows. And we don't see much in the way of coronal holes. Keep an eye on that. M-class flare possibility has gone up to 20% chance. It was down to 10, so we're back up again. And geomagnetic storm activity is low. So let's keep our eye on the sun, see if that 20% goes up at all. From an astrological standpoint, we are dealing consciously with Virgo, Earth sign. So we have Earth is the conscious, and unconscious we're at the void, of course, which means in between two different signs. It's between Leo and Virgo. So fire and earth on the underneath side. The unconscious, so we got fire and earth we're dealing with there, and earth on the outside. So we know how fire and earth operates together. We've been dealing with in the last couple days. Now we've got that fire and earth going on unconsciously instead of just between the conscious and the unconscious. And the transition of both underneath is kind of a reflection of what was going on above. So we've got a lot we're dealing with energetically as we're getting ready to go into this new moon. A lot of processing of how to make the ideas in our life practical. How to make those ideas in our life practical, useful things for us. All right, that's where we're at there. Current phase of the moon is 3% full. You could see we're just about down to the new moon where we'll be tomorrow. And on the Mayan Oracle, we're at a 5-tone day. 5-tone is called the overtone. Kin for today is the moon, so that makes today the overtone moon. And the guide for today above it right here is the earth. So we're the overtone moon guided by the earth. See the overtone position here, the 5th position in the wave spell of the serpent. And the supporting cast members we have are the storm, the dog, and the human underneath. And our phrase for today is I empower in order to purify, commanding flow. I seal the process of universal water with the overtone tone of radiance. I am guided by the power of navigation. And today is a galactic activation portal day. 5th one along the way, actually 4th one. We've got a series more to go yet. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 right there. So there's our whole row of them. All right. And today on the Gregorian calendar is the 14th of September 2012. All right, so that catches you up to speed in our cosmic weather, what we're dealing with. In light of all that's going on in the world, the somewhat revolutionary activities that are taking place, I thought I'd play this piece. It's part 1 of the American Revolution, understand a little bit more what went on here in this country. I play this maybe in the hopes that understanding what happened then might help some of the thought process about what's going on right now. Because there are those who are concerned that we are about to go into a major revolution here in this country. Is it going to be the kind of thing, a civil war type of event where Americans are fighting Americans, or is this going to be an actual revolution where Americans step up against a real problem, which is the government that is causing the situations to get worse? And will the revolution be one that will step up and require of them to stand by their principles and get back on track? We'll find out. Nonetheless, this is part 1 about the American Revolution. Here we go.
The saga of the American Revolution begins. In Boston, political radicals encourage the acts that lead to the revolution, and 13 divided, ill-prepared colonies reluctantly join forces to battle the most powerful nation on earth.
Passion governs, and she never governs wisely. Colonies are not to be emancipated.
All men are created equal, victory or death.
Behind me is Philadelphia's Independence Hall. Inside, men in funny-looking, brightly colored coats and powdered wigs selected Virginia plantation owner George Washington as commander-in-chief of a rebel army, debated and signed the Declaration of Independence, and drafted the United States Constitution. Those men and that time are wrapped in a mythical, patriotic fog. Join us as we lift that fog to discover the very human men and women who shaped one of the most influential and exciting periods in history, the American Revolution.
It was a war that began in a single bloody day. On the night of April 18th, 1775, a Bostonian of French descent rode hard into the Massachusetts countryside. His name was Paul Revere, and his sturdy hands fashioned some of the finest silver pieces in colonial America. Sometimes he used his metalworking skills to sculpt false teeth. His ride that night was a link in a chain of events that would lead directly to the 8-year war for America's independence. Before the end of that long war, Revere would be court-martialed and finally acquitted for his role in an American naval fiasco. But it was this ride that would make him immortal.
Paul Revere was one of several people who had volunteered to be alarm riders. As it turned out, Paul Revere's ride took him in the same direction that the British were going to march.
The message Paul Revere and his fellow alarm riders carried was about a column of 700 British troops marching from the port of Boston into the Massachusetts countryside.
I rode upon a full gallop for Mystic Road. In Medford, I awakened the captain of the Minutemen, and after that, I alarmed almost every house till I got to Lexington. Paul Revere.
In Lexington, in this house, Revere found the friends he wished to warn of the British advance. Samuel Adams, a political agitator and propagandist, and John Hancock, the wealthiest man in New England, once described as a young man whose brains were shallow and pockets deep. They were both radicals and targets of the British. But General Thomas Gage, commander of the King's Army in Boston, had more to be concerned about than two radical leaders. He knew that colonists were storing weapons and ammunition in nearby Concord.
He saw that they were organizing themselves into independent military units. There was already a military organization in the colonies. It was the colonial militia. But they were beginning to form from the militia these people called the Minutemen, who were 1/3 of the militia group, the most active, youngest men, ready to move at a moment's notice.
The road to Concord ran through Lexington. On the village green, 77 of these Minutemen and militiamen organized in the early morning of April 19th.
The militia had no intention of stopping the British at Lexington. They simply lined up along the common in a rather pathetic display of force, and they were ordered not to fire on the British.
Gage had marched troops into the Massachusetts countryside before, looking for arsenals, and he had met colonial militia before. But those meetings had ended bloodlessly, with the British turning around and marching back to Boston. At Lexington, 23-year-old Sylvanus Wood, barely 5 feet tall, had a view from the militia line.
The officer swung his sword and said, "Lay down your arms, you damn rebels, or you will all be dead men." Sylvanus Wood.
As often occurs in this kind of confrontation, there was a nervousness about the whole operation, and somehow someone fired a shot and started a war.
I saw and heard a gun fired, which appeared to be a pistol. Then I could distinguish 2 guns and then a continual roar of musketry. Paul Revere.
There was some dispute about who fired the first shot. It was very natural, the most natural thing in the world, for the troops to open fire on armed opponents.
At the end of the encounter, 8 colonists were dead. 2 were wounded. Only 1 British soldier had received a minor flesh wound. For most of them, as well as the Americans, this was their very first taste of battle.
They had just fired on their own British troops. After all, this would be like the United States National Guard standing at Lexington and firing at the regular army that comes close to them.
The British marched on to Concord and began to seek out the hidden arsenals. Believing their town was about to be destroyed, the Minutemen and militiamen acted. They moved on the British companies left to hold the bridge over the Concord River. As the rebels marched towards the bridge, the British fired a warning shot. Then they fired into the approaching colonists. The American rebels fired back. British soldiers were killed. The confrontation on Concord Bridge started a 19-mile running battle as nearly 11,000 Minutemen and militiamen from all over the state rushed toward the road from Concord to Boston, the avenue of the British retreat. Over 4,000 of them would reach the road to fire upon the King's army.
The real battle took place on the march back to Boston, and it was a very bloody process with the Americans pouring in shots at this British column from both sides, and the British sending out flanking parties into the fields to catch many an unwary American from behind and bayonet him in the back. And then they've had to fight their way through several towns, and there was a lot of house-to-house fighting. It was really a brawl.
Of the musket balls that rained around the Redcoats, only 1 in 300 found its mark. Ironically, the Americans fired with British-made Brown Bess muskets, which they had been issued as militiamen. The weapon was notoriously inaccurate.
We were fired on from all sides, but mostly from the rear. The country was an amazing strong one, full of hills, woods, stone walls, etc., which the rebels did not fail to take advantage of. We marched miles, their numbers increasing from all parts, while ours was reduced.
This is the UFO News with Joshua Poet.
All right, Dirk, thank you very much. This is the UFO News for today. 5 stories. Story number 1 comes to us from Milford, Massachusetts. Milford, Massachusetts, September 13th. Shot the sky over Blackstone River today. Before work, clear sky, no clouds or chemtrails. Didn't see anything until I watched my clip after work. Another fast walker getting more defined. Take a look and see what we've got here. Okay, nothing at the moment. Let's jump forward here. There we go. See it moving pretty quick. Okay, that's our object in question. So just because you don't see anything when you take your picture doesn't mean you shouldn't check your camera, because look at all these surprises that show up. Alright, moving along from there to UFO over Diamond Mine in Arctic. There we go, we have a cloud-like formation there. Some people are calling this a wormhole or portal to another dimension. However, it does look like a massive UFO that has 3 beams of light coming down from its bottom. The photo was taken at Delvik Diamond Mine in the Arctic this week. They say the photo was taken outside and many of the employees working there came out to see. I don't believe aliens have an interest in diamonds. However, it is possible there is another material they are interested in nearby. Also, the Arctic Ocean area would be a great location for an underwater base. Let's take a look at what we got here. Alright. There's our object in question right here. Certainly very interesting. You can see under filter it is something there. It is not just an illusion you see in the one. And of course, what are these beams coming down? Good question. Alright, so you see taken through different filters, the objects are still there. The question is, what are they? Okay. Links available for you to check it out, see what you think. Next story comes to us from Beirut. Got the plane and the object in question right here. While filming from the window of an airplane, suddenly an unidentified object passed by us. It was really unbelievable when I received and viewed the video in slow motion, so I'm going to share it with you. Here we go. Okay, the wing of the plane. We should see this object momentarily. There we go. Did you catch that? Moved pretty quick from left to right. There it is again. Should be seeing it from left to right. There it goes, right there. So, alright. Video's available. Check it out. See what you think. Here's one that comes to us from Lake Ontario, Canada on the 2nd. UFO videos recorded in the sky above Lake Ontario, one of the 5 Great Lakes of North America. It is bounded on the north and southwest by Canadian province of Ontario and on the south by the American state of New York. This was recorded on September 2nd. Okay, we know where. Let's take a look at it. Okay, there's the object in question right in the middle. These are the first 2 videos we made of the strange black orb. So we're going to zip along. This is a 9.5 minute long video. There's the orb in question. Okay. So was there quite some time. Check out the video, see what you think. It's 9.5 minutes long. Next one here, I know a number of you saw in the sky this image the other day. Well, here's a report about this. Despite UFO reports, officials say no missile crashed in Colorado. Saugatche County, Colorado. First it was a plane, then it was a missile. At one point, some even believed it was a UFO. Those were all among the rumors when a particular white streaking sight was spotted in the dark early morning sky in southwestern Colorado on Thursday. Trooper Josh Lewis said the Colorado State Patrol received the first call on the matter at approximately 6:40 a.m., while the reporting party believing a plane crash had just occurred. As officers were en route, Lewis said the CSP received word from the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico that the projectile was not a plane but instead a failed test missile launch. Officials with the U.S. Army told Fox 31 that the White Sands facility had tested a missile at 6:30 a.m. Thursday, but that all of the debris from the test had been contained to the facility grounds, in contrast to the report from Lewis. Army officials insisted that their test had gone as planned and that they did not believe any of the debris would be visible to residents of Colorado. Several viewers emailed Fox 31 concerned and confused about what they had seen Thursday morning. One individual wrote, "I have no clue what it was, so I guess I'll just call it a UFO." Speaking for the CSP, Lewis said that he had no further information about the peculiar sighting. When attempting to investigate the incident further, he said authorities at the White Sands Missile Range informed his office to stand down. All right, so that's our object in question. What was that? Definitely conflicting reports on what it is, so hopefully we'll find out in time a bit more what it was. All right, and here is one last report. This is a mothership letting out an orb, and this is around the ISS. So we're going to be able to get a good look here. Now this is a 3-minute long video. Zip through here. Okay. This would be the mothership in question here, and the small orbs coming out. Okay, just going to keep moving forward here. And you can see there is movement going on here. Okay. So we're going to backtrack again now. It's going to... There's the UFO right there. That's a pretty good size object. Okay, and as you see, NASA switched to camera view once that occurred. There we go. That was originally what was seen before they switched to camera view. Alright. So a couple different filters thrown on it, and the object is still there. I'm sure this is going to be studied. Question is, what is that? Don't know. Anyway, that's our UFO news for today. Let's jump away for a moment. Take a moment to wake up. I'll be right back.
What if our government was responsible for some of the greatest crimes against this nation? Would you really want to know? These are big questions, but these questions deserve answers. It's time to demand the truth. People shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid. 9/11 was an inside job. Kennedy was killed by the CIA. Jimmy Carter saw UFO. Answers to secrets you need to know. So wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Wake up, wake up, wake up.
Okay. Continuing along here. Well, first story about Ron Paul. Ron Paul is right again. Predicts Al Qaeda will move into Libya. This is dated back.
Most people celebrated the toppling of Libyan leader Gaddafi this week. You did not. You said this: the current situation in Libya may be a short-term victory for empire, but it is a loss for our American republic. Worse still, Gaddafi's successor is likely to be just as bad or worse than Gaddafi himself. Question: you really don't think that getting rid of this murderer, as Reagan called him, the mad dog of the Middle East, the architect of Pan Am 103, you don't think getting rid of Gaddafi is a good thing?
No, I think it's a good thing. I think it's the way we did it. But why is it that we started doing business with him 5 years ago? Was that a good thing? I think that was silly, too. But was it a great thing to get rid of Saddam Hussein? Yes. But do we have a great result in Iraq? No, we've delivered Iraq to the Iranians. So I would say long-term consequences are very, very important. We have no idea what's going to come out of Libya. I'm very skeptical. But maybe it'll be a miracle and everybody will be wonderful and they'll have Western democracy and everybody will be pleased. But I'm predicting that's not going to happen because we've already said troops are needed now to maintain order. Nobody even knows who the rebels represent. And there's good evidence that the Al-Qaeda is there. So we may be delivering Al-Qaeda another prize. They'll be in Libya. They weren't there before. And also, the Al-Qaeda is in Iraq now. So these unintended consequences of our foreign policy are so overwhelming. Logic tells us that we shouldn't be dealing with our foreign policy in this manner. We should be dealing for national security in defense of our country and not pretending that we can pick the dictators around the world.
Mr. President, for the first time since 1979, a sitting ambassador, Christopher Stevens, plus 3 other Americans were killed in the line of duty. We send more than $1 billion a year to Egypt, tens of millions to Libya after its liberation. Is it time to reconsider foreign aid to countries where many of the people don't want us around?
Well, look, the United States doesn't have an option of withdrawing from the world. And, you know, we're the one indispensable nation. Countries all around the world look to us for leadership, even countries where sometimes you experience protests.
All right, so there's the first one there. So Dr. Paul talked about some situations and look how things have evolved. Now here's something else from Dr. Paul. Pay attention to. Countries should panic over Fed's decision. What took Ben Bernanke 60 minutes of mumbling about tools, word twisting, data manipulating to kind of sort of admit that in fact he is lost, Ron Paul eloquently expresses in 25 seconds in this Bloomberg TV clip. Nothing that we are noting that we are creating money out of thin air. Paul sums up Bernanke's position perfectly. We've lost control. And there's some clips here for you to check out. It's a 5-minute clip talking about. I'm not going to play these because I got to keep moving on. But he says Paul's reaction to the Federal Reserve stimulus. It should not surprise anybody, but it's still astounding. To me, it is so astounding that it does not collapse the markets. Bernanke said that we are in very big trouble. We're going to do something unprecedented, and we believe it will not hurt the dollar. And yet, the stocks, well, they say we love this stuff, but the dollar didn't do so well today, and the real value of the dollar is measured against gold, and gold skyrocketed from its very low to its highest. And it means we are weakening the dollar. We are trying to liquidate our debt through inflation. The consequence of what the Fed is doing is a lot more than just CPI. It has to do with male investment and people doing the wrong things at the wrong time. Believe me, there is plenty of that. The one thing that Bernanke has not achieved, and it frustrates him, I can tell, is to get no economic growth. He doesn't do anything with the unemployment numbers. I think the country should have panicked over what the Fed is saying, that we have lost control, and the only thing we have left is massively creating new money out of thin air, which has not worked before and is not going to work this time. So, very important that we pay attention. You know, Dr. Paul was dismissed by the GOP, but doesn't mean that people should dismiss him, because once you listen to what he's about and his ideas, you realize that the GOP were absolute idiots, and they have their own agenda, and it has nothing to do with the Constitution and really securing any liberties for America. So, continuing on, this is a reality check with Ben Swan. Listen to what he has to say.
Well, 2 days after we aired my one-on-one interview with President Obama about why the U.S. would be fighting al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and yet supporting them in Syria, we may now be seeing the price of that foreign policy, one that began under President Bush and has been carried through the Arab Spring. Tonight, the latest on the fallout in the Middle East and why the media's narrative on that Arab Spring can't change the facts. This is a reality check you won't see anywhere else. The attacks on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya were just the beginning. The first in what is now spreading across the Middle East. No, not the Arab Spring that the national media and politicians want to tell you is the birth of new democracies. Much of what is being sold to the American people by media and politicians is simply not accurate. The idea that the United States has been growing allies across the Middle East since the war in Iraq isn't true. Look at what has happened just today. Violence is once again spreading at the American embassy in Cairo. Police officers today trying to control protesters, throwing tear gas into the crowds. Protesters now storming the U.S. embassy compound in Yemen. The demonstrators there tearing down building signs and burning the American flag, but not entering buildings housing the offices. In Yemen, where the U.S. has conducted more than 40 airstrikes on towns just this year. In Iraq, protesters gathering in an angry but peaceful protest demanding the expulsion of U.S. diplomats. And get this, more clashes following that deadly attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, where 4 Americans were killed on Tuesday, including the U.S. ambassador to Libya, Chris Stevens. And it is in Libya, this bastion of so-called new democracy, where the U.S. has now sent 2 American warships to the coast. Today, President Obama already dispatching an elite group of Marines into Tripoli and ordering increased security at all U.S. missions around the world. And in the midst of all of this, the political finger-pointing. President Obama trying to appear in control, Republican challenger Mitt Romney saying that the president has failed to lead. But what you need to know is that the real problem here, isn't the person in the White House per se, it's the policy. Remember, in my one-on-one with the president, I asked him this question.
You mentioned about al-Qaeda during your speech, going after al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, certainly going after them in Yemen as well. Yeah. And yet there's some concern about the U.S. funding the Syrian opposition when there are a lot of reports that al-Qaeda is kind of heading up that opposition. How do you justify the two?
Well, I share that concern, and so what we've done is to say we will provide non-lethal assistance to Syrian opposition leadership that are committed to a political transition, committed to an observance of human rights. We're not going to just dive in and get involved with a civil war that, in fact, involves some elements of people who are genuinely trying to get a better life, but also involve some folks who would, over the long term, do the United States harm.
And the president's answer is even more important tonight than when that question was first asked. Because the real issue isn't how strongly will the U.S. respond to the uprisings in Libya, in Egypt, and in Yemen. The real question, will the U.S. keep pushing forward in Syria when the exact same blueprint for democracy in Egypt and in Libya clearly isn't working? And that is Reality Check. If you would like to make your voice heard on this story, obviously the situation in Libya more...
Moving right along here. Next one I want to go to is, let's stay on the same theme here with Libya. The story here comes to us from Veterans Today. Says, embassy killings in Libya, stench of CIA Mossad false flag. Now, there were reports ahead of time about something that could possibly go on September 11th, and sure enough, this was one of the events that did take place. Real Intelligence reports at total odds with reported news. Recent reports tying Coptic Christians to the film, which was never the issue of the Middle East upheaval, is an attempt by the same forces responsible for the Alexandria church bombings to bring about civil war between Christians and Muslims in Egypt. The bombing was traced to the Mossad. Investigations by me, published yesterday on Press TV's website, cited Reverend and Dr. Terry Jones as the source of the videos cited for instigating violence across the Middle East. Our investigation into Jones' past showed him to be a trained CIA asset with direct ties to Mossad. He served in Germany for years as an organizer for the CIA under the highly secret Gladio program until expelled by German government. You can be a CIA agent, even a terrorist, but in Germany, if you buy a mail order PhD, it is a crime. Dr. Terry Jones would have been better off if he had called himself Agent Terry Jones. VT offers a heartfelt condolence to the family of Ambassador Stevens and the families of other Americans lost in Libya. Here's an MSNBC clip covering their day-late discovery of Jones at the heart of what is a conspiracy not only to cause unrest, but as a cover for assassinations of U.S. diplomats by highly trained operations teams.
Well, the violent protests that have left 4 Americans dead, they're raging in Egypt and Libya. The California man who made this film about the Prophet Muhammad that sparked the protests has now gone into hiding. And then that man there you see on your left, who is promoting the movie, is Florida Pastor Terry Jones. He has a history of this provocative acts against Islam. And NBC correspondent Kerry Sanders joins me in Miami with the latest on this. So explain the connection, Kerry, of Pastor Jones to this and why he's involved with this film.
Okay, he's the 59-year-old pastor in rural Florida in Gainesville, a very small church, the Dove World Outreach Center. If they have 50 members, that would be a lot. But he has found a way to make his voice known around the world through the internet before, and it's possible that that's exactly what happened here again today. We're attempting to speak to him directly. There's a crew with him in Gainesville right now setting up to do an interview, but so far we have not actually spoken to Pastor Terry Jones. But yesterday he had, on 9/11, what he called International Judge Muhammad Day. And on this day, he not only held with a small group of his parishioners, but he also had a live stream on the internet where he showed about a 13-minute promotional clip of this movie. Now, because in the past he has been able to get international attention, it's possible that his broadcast or his stream on the internet captured the attention in the Islamic world. He stated on his website that the fact that angry protesters climbed the wall at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, ripped down the American flag and tore it apart further indicates the lack of respect that Islam has for any other religion. He claims that this movie is, quote, not designed to attack Muslims, but to show the destructive ideology of Islam. And that goes back to what he has been effectively doing before. Now, if we go back to 2010, he wanted to burn the Quran, and there was so much outrage built up internationally because of his claim. It took a phone call from Barack Obama to stop it. But then in 2011, he did actually burn those Qurans. He posted that video on the internet, and in Kandahar, Afghanistan, there was such a violent reaction that 9 people were killed, 81 injured.
All right, the article here goes on to say that the network has been told to find a way to blame Al-Qaeda on the killings at the embassy. It has now become accepted fact that the demonstrations were organized to cover the murders. So you can see there's a lot more to this. I'm going to leave that for you to read. And one more here. This comes to us from Alex Jones. This is a good report as well. It's a short report. Was the Muhammad movie a contrived fraud? I want you to see this too.
This is Melissa Melton reporting for InfoWars Nightly News. The Department of Homeland Security's National Terror Alert Response Center put out a warning on September 11th that the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt was consorting with Iranian spies to create a, quote, terror axis that would promote global terrorism. This occurred on the same day that Christopher Stevens, our ambassador to Libya, was killed alongside 3 of his staff members in protests sparked by the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, not only is this rhetoric a throwback to George W. Bush's Axis of Evil speech, wherein he claimed that Iran was the biggest threat to global peace, that it was creating weapons of mass destruction, even though a decade later we still have no solid proof of that, it really does beg the question, which Muslim Brotherhood is it? Is it the one that our White House has opened its doors to, that we're in contract negotiations with, and that we've been giving billions in military aid funding to? Or is it the Muslim Brotherhood that apparently sparks protests that end in the death of our ambassador and are working alongside Iran to promote global terrorism? One thing is certain, as we continue to regime change and nation build across the Middle East, our government is having a harder and harder time keeping their story straight. Now, at the time that I wrote this story, the Pentagon was getting ready to release drones to Libya. Hey, Pentagon, I have an idea for you. Why don't you send the drones to the same address that you're sending all of these billions in military aid checks to? You'll save yourself quite a bit of time. Now, moving on. A trailer for the Muhammad film that supposedly sparked the protests in Egypt, Libya, and Yemen earlier this week had apparently been up on YouTube for 2 months, but according to a story by Paul Joseph Watson up on Infowars.com today, the attacks were coordinated well in advance of this trailer being released. Now, this film was purposely dubbed and edited to enrage the Muslim population. In it, the Prophet Muhammad is depicted as a pedophile, a homosexual, a religious phony, a philanderer, a womanizer, and a bloodthirsty dictator. And despite the alleged filmmakers' claim that the movie was funded by rich Jewish donors to the tune of $5 million, it has all the quality of a low-budget film project. But the mainstream media is jumping all over it because they want to disguise the fact that the Al-Qaeda forces our CIA created, and which we are funding to back our regime change agenda over in Syria, are also the same Al-Qaeda forces that occasionally like to blow our people up. But they don't want you to know that because they have to justify this whole Syrian regime change thing any way they can. More and more, though, this trailer is looking like a psyop that was created specifically to antagonize the Muslim people, to manipulate their emotions, and promote a clash of civilizations so that the U.S. and NATO can increase military presence and rush in and pose as saviors. It's classic Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. For InfoWars Nightly News, I'm Melissa Melton.
All right. You know, my first thought after I saw the video was this was a joke. I mean, the name, what was it? I don't even remember that. Sam Basile. I mean, right off the bat, the name of the director, producer sounds like imbecile, and I think it was like some imbecile is what it kind of some comes out with. It just doesn't make it's just stupid. You know, basically you look at that and it's like this is not can't be real. Anyway, moving right along. Remember the other day we talked about the House was going to be voting on this bill? Well, guess what? Your friends over at the House, that's right, your friends at the House of Representatives approve. This isn't disprove, but it's the word approve. They approved the sweeping warrantless electronic spy powers. The House on Wednesday reauthorized for 5 years broad electronic eavesdropping powers that legalized and expanded the George W. Bush administration's warrantless wiretapping program. The FISA Amendment Act, which is expiring at year's end, allows the government to electronically eavesdrop on Americans' phone calls and emails without a probable cause warrant, so long as one of the parties to the communication is believed outside the United States. The communications may be intercepted to acquire foreign intelligence information. The government has also interpreted the law to mean as long as the real target is Al-Qaeda, the government can wiretap purely domestic emails and phone calls without getting a warrant from a judge. That's according to David Christ, a former top anti-terrorism attorney at the Justice Department. So again, is the system of the House, are they our friends here in the United States if they are allowing warrantless wiretapping to go on? You tell me. Are they our friends? I don't know. Well, here's something that's going to take place in New York, and we'll see how it works out with this first weekend of movies. New York Health Board has passed a rule banning supersized sugary drinks at restaurants, concession stands, and other eateries. The regulation passed Thursday puts a 16-ounce size limit on cups and bottles of non-diet soda, sweetened teas, and other calorie packaged beverages. The ban will apply in fast food joints, movie houses, and Broadway theaters, workplace cafeterias, and most other places selling prepared food. It doesn't cover supermarkets or most convenience stores. City health officials say the ban is necessary to combat a deadly obesity epidemic. All right, there you go. So they're going to work on combating the obesity by going after the sugar, but never mind them going after the real infiltrators and the real perpetrators of 9/11. It's better to go after those abusing sugar, because apparently those in New York don't really have that much power. So they're going to use their power to do the things they're capable of, going after sugar abusers. So how does it feel to have that much power, to have all the power in the world to be able to stop the sugar abuser, but yet feel helpless to be able to stop the real criminals? Must suck to be you, huh? I'm glad that I'm not having to be out there to try to stop these sugar eaters. Whew, that's kind of crazy. Okay, and here's one. This happened on September 11th. Now a Texas posse is hunting for Halliburton's missing radioactive device. Texas may call out the National Guard in the hunt for a 7-inch radioactive rod used in drilling natural gas wells, lost this week by Halliburton, somewhere in a 130-mile swath of the state's western oil fields. The Texas Department of State Health Services said yesterday it sought help from an Austin-based National Guard unit that has equipment to locate the radioactive item, which can pose a health risk if touched or held for several days. Halliburton lost the unit on September 11th, according to a report yesterday at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Pickup trucks with detection gear retracted the route of the vehicle that carried the radioactive rod before it was lost. The trucks drove at 10 miles an hour between Pecos, where the device was used on a well, and Odessa without finding the unit. You know what happened? I think they gave this radioactive thing to Homer Simpson, and then somewhere along the line, well, we all watched The Simpsons to know what happens, right? He just lost it. I mean, come on now. On September 11th, Halliburton lost a radioactive device. Okay. All right. All right. It's all good. Nothing to see here, folks. Just plain ordinary news. We should just zip right by it as if nothing at all. Now here, state officials are conceding Obama citizenship. Not everybody is convinced, and Kansas officials are planning to hold a hearing on Thursday afternoon to weigh whether or not President Barack Obama is a citizen and should appear on the state's November ballot. The Kansas Objections Board will be considering a challenge filed by Joe Montgomery, a Manhattan resident who Monday objected to Obama being on the ballot. He claims the president is not an American citizen since his father was a citizen of the United Kingdom and Kenya. The all-Republican board, which consists of Secretary of State Chris Kobach, Governor Jeff Collier, and Attorney General Derek Schmidt, has the power to remove Obama from the ballot in his mother's home state. Well, very nice effort. Good to see that there's a few individuals here that have tried, but we all know what's going to happen here. That's right. They're going to suddenly deem that, hey, Obama is okay, even though law enforcement officials have proved without a shadow of a doubt, and I'm talking about Sheriff Joe and his cold case posse, have proved without a shadow of a doubt that the documents are forged. Somehow or another, state of Kansas is going to say, Obama's okay, don't worry about it, and the guy's going to go on the ballot. So, I'm just saying, that's what seems to happen every time, right? Look, it's a corrupt system. It's broken. You can't expect that something good is going to come out of a broken system. The system needs to completely collapse. We need to move forward and put in a new system because it's corrupt on all sides. The politicians are corrupt. The political system is corrupt. The judicial system is corrupt. The banking system is corrupt. The police system is corrupt. The military system is corrupt. All systems are corrupt. What you need to do is you need to understand all of this, and you need to stop giving your confidence to all of these systems and believing they're going to be fixed. They're not. We need to have another solution. The solution, I say, is we need to turn towards spirit, because the system is so out of whack that unless you get the help of spirit, there's nothing you're going to be able to do. So, we're going to turn our attention now to something more positive related. This is a piece on crop circles. These are crop circles from 2012. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go into the reading of 6 more of these passages from Warrior of the Light. We're going to close things out. So check this out. See if you have any insights that come as you're looking at these crop circles. Here we go. Alright, there you go. So lots of crop circles, things to pay attention to, because life is more than just what's going on in the political arena with all of the idiots out there. And I say idiots very kindly because, well, they are running around like idiots trying to convince you. And it's not just the politicians, it's the politicians and the media and all of those that are part of the establishment. They run around thinking that you're stupid. And that's the sad part. And you allow them to think that you're stupid without changing anyone's attitude or letting them know otherwise. You just play into it. So stop. If you're out there and you're letting the government play you for a fool, stop it. If you're out there and you are aware that the government's doing that, good for you. Keep waking up others, because we need to be woken up. You're seeing all the people out there that are running around still lost and confused as much as I am. So we need to do something about that. All right, continuing on now. Going to read the next 6 passages here. It's from Warrior of the Light. So just go ahead and relax. Close your eyes. The warrior of the light does not worry that to others his behavior might seem quite mad. He talks out loud to himself when he is alone. Sometimes someone told him that this is the best way of communicating with the angels, and so he takes a chance and tries to make contact. At first he finds this very difficult. He thinks that he has nothing to say, that he will just repeat the same meaningless twaddle. Even so, the warrior persists. He spends all day talking to his heart. He says things with which he does not agree. He talks utter nonsense. One day he notices a change in his voice. He realizes he is acting as a channel for some higher wisdom. The warrior may seem mad, but this is just a disguise. According to a poet, the warrior of light chooses his enemies. He knows that he is capable of, and he does not have to go around the world boasting of his qualities and virtues. Nevertheless, there is always someone who wants to prove himself better than he is. For the warrior, there is no better or worse. Everyone has the necessary gifts for his particular path. But certain people insist. They provoke and offend and do everything they can to irritate him. At that point, his heart says, do not respond to these insults. They will not increase your abilities. They will tire you needlessly. A warrior of the light does not waste his time listening to provocations. He has a destiny to fulfill. The warrior of the light remembers a passage from John Bunyan. Although I have been through all that I do not regret the many hardships I met, because it was they who brought me to the place I wish to reach. Now all I have is this sword, and I give it to whoever wishes to continue his pilgrimage. I carry with me the marks and the scars of battle. They are the witnesses of what I have suffered and the rewards of what I have conquered. They are the beloved marks and the scars that will open the gates of paradise to me. There was a time when I was used to listen to the tales of bravery. There was a time when I lived only because I needed to live, but now I live because I am a warrior, and because I wish one day to be in the company of him for whom I have fought so hard. The moment that he begins to walk along it, the warrior of the light recognizes the path. Each stone, each bend cries welcome to him. He identifies with the mountains and with the streams. He sees something of his own soul in the plants and the animals and the birds of the field. Then, accepting the help of God and of God's signs, he allows his personal legend to guide him towards the task that life has reserved for him. On some nights, he has nowhere to sleep. On others, he suffers from insomnia. That's just how it is, thinks the warrior. I was the one who chose to walk this path. In these words lie his power. He chose the path along which he is walking, and so he has no complaints. From now on, and for the next few hundred years, the universe is going to help warriors of the light and hinder the prejudiced. The Earth's energy needs to be renewed. New ideas need space. Body and soul need new challenges. The future has become the present, and every dream except those dreams that involve preconceived ideas have a chance to be heard. Anything of importance will remain. Anything useless will disappear. It is not the warrior's responsibility, however, to judge the dreams of others, and he does not waste time criticizing other people's decisions. In order to have faith in one's own path, he does not need to prove that somebody else's path is wrong. A warrior of the light carefully studies the position that he intends to conquer. However difficult the objective, there is always a way of overcoming obstacles. He seeks out alternative paths. He sharpens his sword and tries to fill his heart with the necessary determination to face the challenge. But as he advances, the warrior realizes that there are difficulties that he had not reckoned with. If he waits for the ideal moment, he will never set off. The warrior requires a touch of madness to take the next step. The warrior uses that touch of madness, for in both love and war it is impossible to foresee everything. Let's take a deep breath. Contemplate the words of the warrior of the light that you just heard. Contemplate all of those qualities and understand that those qualities exist within you, and the opportunities to step forth as a warrior of the light are all part of your very nature. And by focusing and moving closer towards those, you understand more about yourself, who you are, and why you are here. Imagine that all of your chakras are activated from the bottom of the spine up. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, and indigo. Imagine the light flowing through your body from the top of your head to the bottom of your spine. Imagine this light expanding outward, this multicolored light forming an aura of protection around you, spilling out into the room where you are, the city where you live, the state, the country, and then around the world. And imagine this love and this light and protection going out to each and every individual. And imagine the feeling that you have as you receive the light coming to you from others around the planet as well. I think a good thought for everybody in the world today. And as you do, let's bring our energy and attention back to the present moment on the count of 3. 3, coming back to the present moment filled with confidence. 2, coming back to the present moment filled with faith. And 1, coming back to the present moment happy, healthy, and whole. Happy, healthy, and whole. All right, there you have it. Take a deep breath. Open your eyes. The weekend is upon us. Go out and have a great time. I'll be back next week. More news and information. Be safe. Have a good time. Talk to you soon. Peace. I'm out of here.